Initial Thoughts is a spoiler-free movie review series. All opinions are my own.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Initial Thoughts, a series in which we talk about films as and when they are released. Today's film we're talking about is Joker Folie, Deux, which is directed by Todd Phillips and stars Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. So if you've been on the channel for a while, you'll know my love for the first film, the original film, and the film that did not need a sequel in Joker, which was released in 2019, and of a year that was so stacked with such quality that was 2019, Joker for me stood above the rest. And it was a real standout performance, a real standout kind of subgenre which you would put into the space of, yes, it was dark, but it was darkly comedic, darkly certainly interesting, and certainly a film that had you intrigued on the story being told, no matter how dark or how rough it got throughout. And the original film is a film that I thought did not need a sequel. And I think probably like a lot of you guys, you would feel the same. This film did not need a sequel. And there's a lot of films that fall into that category. We'll be talking about another one of those next month, about films that do not need a sequel, but get made anyway. And actually, when it was first announced, you know, that famous photo of Joaquin Phoenix and the script of Folie, Deux, and then you hear Lady Gaga's attached, and I went, well, I kind of stood by the point of it did not need a sequel. But if they're going to do one, I hope and pray they do it right. And then, as I say, you get Lady Gaga attached, who is pretty good as an actress. You know, A Star Is Born is a brilliant performance by her. She was worthy of winning the Oscar. Even in House of Gucci, which I didn't like as a film, I thought she was probably the best part of it. So Lady Gaga has a lot, and for her playing the Harley Quinn role, I wasn't against it. I thought it made sense. The casting made sense. But then I start hearing that it's going to be a musical, and this is not me going to be one of these guys that just goes, oh, it's a musical, so obviously it's rubbish. I just thought, a musical doesn't really fit the tone of what was the first one. You know, it seems it's quite a left turn, it's quite a swerve, and it's quite a different road to take, in the sense of, you know what made the first one successful, you know what made the first film so brilliant. It was the dark, it was the interest and the intrigue into the character, and more of the Arthur Fleck character rather than the Joker character. The Joker character itself, or the kind of alter ego, only appears in the last kind of final scene, or final, 20 minutes of the film, the Murray Franklin show and onwards. And before that, it is all Arthur Fleck. And any other depiction of the Joker that we've seen over the years, all the way back to something like even Jack Nicholson, but certainly at Heath Ledger's, it is, you do not see the man behind the mask. Obviously not a mask. The man behind the face paint, if you like. You don't see, you obviously theorize, and you always feel, you know, there's definitely a dark story of why he's got to this point. But in the first film, it is all about Arthur Fleck, and you learn so much, and certainly we'd empathise. And I think that's one of the most intriguing parts, and most interesting parts about the first film, is we kind of learn to care about a character who is ultimately a villain and is evil. But it's the reason he becomes that. And you certainly go, wow, what his actions are doing isn't right. You do certainly go, I can see why he's pushed to make these, or I can see why he snapped after all the pressure and how much life has got him down, let's say. And for that story was told. And that story was, you know, that the 2 hours or whatever it is of the first film is enough. So going into Folie, Deux, there wasn't any part of me, I don't know about you guys, but there wasn't any part of me going, I need to see more of what makes Arthur Fleck tick, or I need to see more of the Joker. I really didn't. And that was my biggest thing about it not needing a sequel. There wasn't anything more to tell here. And for this film that we're talking about today, in the sequel, it of course is the trial, and he's on trial for his crimes and the situation from the first one. And it just didn't feel like it needed to be told when I read the synopsis of what this film was going to be. But again, all that being said, you go in with an open mind. You go in with an open mind, and you go in with the hope that you're going to be pleasantly surprised. Because the first film was so good, you hope that the second film, the same actor, the same director, and hopefully the same style and the same things to enjoy. So was that the case in Folie Deux? Because if you've been on Twitter or anything recently, you'll have heard there's been quite a backlash to this film. And a lot of people do not like Folie Deux. I heard that myself before I even got seeing it. So I knew I wasn't going into a universally loved film, let's say. Not that the first one was either, mind you, but I didn't think... I just had heard a lot of bad things, and a lot of bad things from people that even enjoyed the first one. And I think that was the biggest red flag for me, because when you think about films that are sequels to beloved first installments, you don't really... Well, if it's people that you know loved the first one, really didn't like the second one, that's how you know you've kind of lost your audience in a way. But as I say, I went in with an open mind. So what did I think of Folie Deux? Honestly, and I have to be as clear about this as I can, I think Folie Deux might be one of the worst sequels ever made. And I mean that in a sense of not because the quality of the movie, this is not the worst film ever made, but I think for difference in quality from the first to second, I can't think of a film that is such a decline in quality. And not only a decline in quality, a loss of its audience. Because the first film, as I mentioned there, so much of what makes it brilliant is absolutely nowhere in this film. Folie Deux is a completely different movie. And honestly, it is a structural mess. Folie Deux has so many directing and decision making that is, and narrative choices that are mind-boggling. And not in a good way. Because everything in here... Okay, well, I'll kind of break down the movie. And obviously no spoilers because I don't do that here. But what I will say, the first kind of 20 minutes of setting the tone, it starts with a kind of Looney Tunes style cartoon. And I went, okay, well, it's kind of going into the funny side of things. And then it gets into the darkness of Arthur in Arkham. And, you know, it kind of sets the tone okay. But here's where the film lost me, and it lost me hard. And it wasn't actually the singing that really did it first. It was the boredom. This film is an absolute snooze fest. And I did not think, of all the things I'd be saying about Folie Deux, I did not think I'd be saying it was a boring film. I'd heard it was rubbish in different regards, and I heard people that didn't like musicals, they went, oh, it's a musical so you wouldn't like it. Let's talk about musicals for a second. Because musicals, when done right, are fantastic. And I'm not a big musicals guy at all. I really am not. And I've been introduced to them through family members or friends. I am not someone who, you know, a new musical comes out and go, oh my god, that's ultimate. I can't wait to see that. I'll give you an example. When I seen La La Land, for example, I didn't want to see that. My mother dragged me to it. I went to see it, and it was one of my favourite films of that year. Because what was so brilliant about that, and this applies to so many musicals, another one, an example of this recently, would have been The Greatest Showman. But even things way back to something like Grease. You have the music. Yes, you have the music and the music throughout. But the music services the plot. You do not just go, let's put a song every 2 seconds. Because I'm telling you this, Folie Deux has more songs and more singing and more musical numbers than any musical I've ever seen. Because it does not stop. It does not stop. And every 2 minutes, it felt like every 2 minutes, either Arthur or Gaga or whoever, or Brendan Gleeson starts singing, and it lost me completely. Completely. But as I said, it wasn't the musical stuff that had me lost at the first part, it was the boredom. I was in an absolute, I was fed up already. I was a little bit checked out. And then they started singing. You went, okay, well, 1 or 2 songs is alright to kind of cleanse the palate, let's say. But it did not stop. Mixed in with that, there is a nonsensical story about and I put this in air quotes, a love story between Arthur and Gaga, or Arthur and Harley Quinn. What? And I get it. Lady Gaga can sing. She's a wonderfully talented singer and actress. But what was the point of any of this story being told? There wasn't. Narratively, this is one of the worst blockbusters I can think of in recent memory, in the sense of the story being told, compared to and I know you could always go, well, it's its own film. It's not its own film, because it relies totally on the fallout from what happened in the first film. So the narrative, the only narrative is, we've got to carry on and get all the characters in from the first one to try and force a narrative here of a trial that makes no sense and no one's interested in. Honestly, Folie Deux is atrocious, and I know I'm going to be more harsh to it than crappy movies, because when I go into something like, I don't know, what's an example? Fast X, or Knock at the Cabin, or The Meg 2, I don't go in expecting an amazing film. And I didn't expect that for Folie Deux either, but what I expected was at least a coherent story, a decent plotline, and a worthy story being told. Folie Deux has none of that. None of it. And the music numbers in between it are from scene to scene, they're... This movie really, really annoyed me. Because it felt like such a waste of time, and you know what it felt like more than anything? And I think that's why there's been such a backlash. And you know what? I am not one for supporting online controversy or anything like that. But I tell you this, the backlash and the low scores, the Rotten Tomatoes score and everything like that, and the Letterboxd and IMDb and everything, the low scores are warranted. Because this, ironically, for a film that is about music and has so much music throughout, this is one of the most tone-deaf films I've ever seen. Ever. Because what it does is it loses the people that love the first film made $1 billion. $1 billion. One of the first R-rated films to do it, or one of the few, I should say, that did it. And honestly, they took, how narratively and how in the decision making and the writing point of view do you go, well, do you know everything that made the first film brilliant? Let's literally scrap everything. From good writing, good dialogue, good plot, good performances, good everything, and let's take all of that away and just go, well, let's get them singing and kind of make it like a courtroom drama that's not interesting. There is good courtroom dramas. There's many, many good courtroom dramas in film, in TV, in everything. This is one of the worst courtroom drama films I've ever seen as well, mixed into that. So the story being told, or lack thereof, is atrocious. The musical numbers are forgettable, annoying, and truth be told, Joaquin Phoenix isn't a great singer. And then you could say, well, maybe that's the point. So what? So what? Some of the narrative choices, and honestly, just kind of, maybe not just the narrative choices, everything around this film boils down to one thing. Why was it made? And you already know the answer to that, don't you? Money. Simply money. But you know what would have worked way better, money-wise, for them? If they had wrote and made a far better structured film from the start. Or, better yet, don't even make a sequel to a film that did not need a sequel. And to make it lacking in this much quality? I was so sick of the character of Arthur Fleck / the Joker by the end of this. And I feel bad for Lady Gaga, I do, because she is better than this. She's better, not because her performance is bad, and actually the two performances, I said, they're not great, but they're not bad. They're fine, they're working what they're given. But dearie, dearie me, what they're given. And Todd Phillips, how you can take the first film and it be such a hit, I just can't get over that. You have, you know the tone that you have set. You as a director and you and the scriptwriters and everything They have set the tone of what the fans enjoyed in the first film. So why in the hell did you make the second film basically to spite them? Basically to go, well, you enjoyed the last film, well, this isn't anything like that. Why? Any sequel that exists. I mentioned the Meg 2 earlier, an awful movie, and one of the worst films, if not the worst film I've seen last year. But at least the Meg 2 follows the same pattern of what the Meg 1 is. At least you kind of expect what the Meg 2 is. As awful as it is, at least it's not... Oh, do you know what? I'm just going off the tirade now. But honestly, I can't get away from the point that why was this made? And yes, for money, but if it was made for money properly, and if it was made for a way that the fans who made it $1 billion the first time, if they'd have kept the tone and really made it an enjoyable sequel, it doesn't have to be as good as the first. It probably would never have been. But even if you give us like a 7 or an 8 out of 10, we'd go, okay, it was good fun, or there was enjoyable moments, and that's it. And yes, it would have made, might not have made the $1 billion, sure, but might have made, 700,000 or 700 million, something like that. This is not going to make much money. God, it might not even break even. Because the numbers I'm hearing early from the preview screenings and things are not so good. And the amount of people walking out at our cinema last night, there was at least 5 people, about the 17th musical number, which was about 20 minutes into the film, mind you. They just got up and left. They said, you know what, I'm done. I thought it was a max exodus to the toilet. No, it was a max exodus to the car park. And you know what? If I didn't want to see how it ended, because I'm a sadistic lunatic in that way, maybe I'm the crazy one, I would have been gone too. Because this film had nothing. Literally nothing. And it was like a character assassination of what was so great about the first film. And I've said, if you've been on the channel for a while, you'll have heard me say this till I'm blue in the face. A sequel, or a prequel, or anything that builds on an IP should celebrate the thing that made it popular. Anything that exists, any sequel or any follow-up media to an original product, think of any, it has to celebrate the first one. This one slaps it in the face, and it actually makes me want to revisit the first film less. And in that sense, that's why I think it's one of the worst sequels ever made. And certainly, maybe not ever made, because there's probably other ones that maybe fall into that category, although I can't think of them off my head. Me and my friends were talking about it in the car park last night after the film, and we were thinking of worst sequels. And the only one that was kind of came to mind was Jurassic Park 2. But it is not as much of a decline as this. Jurassic Park 2 makes this seem like... Oh, you know what, I'm not even going to go down that route. But it is just atrocious. A sequel that did not get made, or it did not need to get made. And when it did, it makes me like the first film less. Not that I think the first film has any less quality as a film. I still think it is brilliant. But now I know this exists, I'll be less inclined to revisit the first. And for me, that is the cardinal sin for a sequel to do that. Folie Deux is really, 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 really bad. And I'm somewhat surprised I'm saying that. But obviously I'd heard the kind of, I'm sure you'd heard it said, as I say, the mutterings online of the early indications that this is not good. It's not a good... honestly, it's the worst musical I've ever seen. It's the worst courtroom drama I've ever seen. And truth be told, it is probably the worst Joker movie I've ever seen. If you don't count the Suicide Squad. Or Suicide Squad, not the Suicide Squad. But that's where we're at. And that is such a shame that we're talking like this. But Folie Deux is Folie a poo. I didn't like it whatsoever. Let's get to rating time. As you can see, IMDb didn't like it either. The world doesn't seem to have liked this film. And I'm right there with him if you couldn't tell. Rating wise for me, I feel like I'm being generous in giving this. Folie Deux is a 4 out of 10. And when I think about, the first film, I think it might just be the biggest decline in quality from original film to sequel that I can think of. I don't think there's been a bigger step down, and a film I've liked less in comparison to its original. The whole thing felt unnecessary, and now that it is here, it's been a story not worth telling. It's been one of the worst sequels that I can think of. And honestly, between being bored and sick of the songs and sick of basically everything on screen and couldn't wait for the film to end, the amount of times me and my friends and everybody else in the cinema, and the amount of phone screens I seen because everybody was bored out of their mind or checking the time to go, how long is left of this? The people that did stay. Folie 2 is a disaster, and usually I'm one to go, well, go and form your own opinion. But what I will say in this instance, and this is very harsh to the film, but I think it's probably the nice thing can be to you guys. If you haven't seen Folie Deux and you loved the first one, don't go and see the sequel. Because by the end of the sequel, you will want to watch the first film less. If you try and stay away from this and just keep the good memory of the first film, that will do you so much better than going to see this film. Because honestly, it'll be a while before I even go and rewatch the first film. And I hope I never see this film again. Folie Deux is really, really bad. And it makes me angry that it was made in the first place. It was not a sequel that needed to be made. And when they did, it basically went the worst direction possible. Folie Deux is poo-poo. Anyway, that is my review for Folie Deux. One I did not like, and one I'm very sad to be talking about in this way. But here we are. I've got to be real, and yeah, this movie is really atrocious. But anyway, that's been my review. I hope you've enjoyed. As I say, you can go and make your own opinion, go and see it if you want, but if you do love the first film, take my heed in the sense of you'd be doing yourself a favour. If you love the first film, don't see the second. And I can't believe it. For any sequel that exists, that's where we're at. But for something to be so main scale and on such a level of this, to be saying that is astounding. But yeah, that has been my review. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like to let me know and subscribe for more like this. And before you go, I just want to plug some of my other content. I've been very active on TikTok this year. There's been a lot of films that I've kind of been focusing on uploading there, and you probably noticed on the YouTubers might have been less uploads, but still the biggest releases, and I always class that on YouTube, the biggest releases of the year are going to be here. And that's why Folie Deux definitely falls into that category for my sins. But honestly, this has been a great year for the channels in general. I've also been on Letterboxd from this year, and it's kind of gone from strength to strength. And if you're looking for kind of a diary of when my uploads are or what my thoughts are on each film, that's a good way of they're categorized. So if you want to follow me on that, I'd be very, very appreciative. Or if you're just here for this video, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to me talking about a movie. And if you want to stick around, I'd appreciate you so, so much. And if you do, I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.
Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Before you go, here are some of my other videos. For updates and information on upcoming videos, the best place to find us is my Twitter. Much love, everyone.